Maybe I should unmute. That would be good. I went in and I'm going in now and I'm checking the audio, making sure everything is going through fine. Woke up this morning and it was weird because I had to sign back into Teams and weird stuff was going on there. So not quite sure if everything is still running the way it's supposed to have been. Audio sounds good on YouTube and Rumble. Checking D Live. It is up and running. Audio sounds good on D Live. Gonna go to Twitch real quick. Make sure at least the audio is working. Twitch sounds good. Gonna jump over to Kick, find out there. See if the stream's up and running and sounding good. Sounds good. So we're up and ready to go. So today I am doing an episode of The Cut, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I've got my coffee, did my smoke break, and ready to go. Take a quick drink of my coffee and go. Okay, so here we go. This is the topic. We're doing it at the top of the hour too, which is really good. So that means I'm on schedule. The secret Vehmic courts of medieval Germany have fascinated scholars, historians, and folklorists for centuries. These courts, formerly recognized in the Holy Roman Empire during the Middle Ages, became enshrouded with myth and legend to such an extent that their real purpose and procedures are difficult to separate from the ghostly tales that surrounded them. Known primarily for their clandestine methods, remote woodland trials, and swift, sometimes deadly verdicts, the Vehmic courts were more than just a judicial curiosity. They became a symbol of arcane power, shadowy justice, and deep-seated communal fear, and they left an indelible mark on the folklore and collective imagination of the German-speaking world. These courts operated mainly in the region of Westphalia and began to appear in written records around the 13th century. However, the customs and traditions they followed many were believed by many to be far older. Some traces some traced their origins to ancient Germanic tribal law, practiced long before the spread of Christianity and Roman influence. As the official judicial systems of the empire weakened or failed to reach the outer rural territories, the Vehmic courts filled a vacuum, enforcing justice in areas where chaos and lawlessness might otherwise reign. One of the defining features of these courts was their secrecy. Unlike modern courts, where proceedings are public and decisions are documented and published, the Vehmic courts were notorious for operating in the shadows. Trials were often held at night in remote clearings deep in the forest or within the darkened halls of local castles. The identities of the judges were often concealed, and the accused were frequently unaware of the charges against them until judgment was rendered. Members of the court, often referred to simply as lay judges, took solemn oaths of secrecy and were bound by strict codes of conduct. Violating the secrecy of the court could result in the same death sentence often issued to the condemned. This aura of invisibility and mystery led to the development of an extensive body of folklore that portrayed the Vedic judges not merely as men, but as shadowy figures, perhaps even spectral or demonic in nature. These stories painted the courts as gatherings of ghostly arbiters who delivered sentences unseen and unheard. According to legend, they could appear and vanish at will, their presence marked only by the grisly result of a hanging body discovered at dawn, with no evidence left behind, except perhaps a small knife stuck into a tree or a cryptic symbol carved in bark. In this folklore, the judges were not simply enforcing human laws, they were executing divine or cosmic justice. Their decrees were beyond question, and their powers omnipresent, and their power omnipresent. Some versions of these tales suggest that the court could try and punish the dead as well as the living. This notion fed into the idea that the judges themselves might not be entirely alive. Travelers in the forest would sometimes report seeing robed figures gliding through the mist, silent and stern, carrying scrolls and tools of execution. These images passed down through generations, contributing to the belief that the Vedic court was as much a spiritual tribunal as a legal one. Certain signs were thought to foretell the arrival or presence of the court. Among the most common was the cry of a blackbird, particularly a raven, circling overhead. This bird was considered an omen of secret judgment. Whispers heard in the woods, inexplicable changes in the wind, or strange symbols carved into doorways or tree trunks were also said to be warnings. These signs indicated that the area had been marked or judged, and the community would respond with caution or even fear. Villagers sometimes told stories of strangers arriving in the night, knocking on doors, and asking cryptid questions. Those who answered incorrectly were said to vanish by morning. In other versions, a person might unknowingly be observed by the courts for months or even years, their actions meticulously recorded until the time of judgment arrived. Such narratives created a culture of hyper-vigilance and obedience, where people were careful not only of what they did, but how it might be interpreted by invisible eyes. The courts also became associated with certain symbols and ritual behaviors. For example, one popular story involved a large oak tree in the forest where many hangings were said to have taken place. This tree was considered sacred or cursed depending on the telling, and it served as a visible reminder that justice, mysterious and final, could strike at any time. The image of a man hanging from a limb with a small parchment pinned to his chest became a chilling icon in the folklore of the region. On this parchment would often be a single word or phrase that supposedly explained the crime, though sometimes it was written in a code known only to the members of the court. The legend of the secret brotherhood behind the courts only grew over time. These men were said to swear unbreakable oaths, participate in ritual initiations, and operate under a hierarchical structure that was both rigid and invisible. Some believed they met beneath ruined churches or in forgotten crypts, and that their decisions were influenced by visions, dreams, or divine revelations. Although most historians agree that the Vemic courts were staffed by ordinary landowners and townsmen, the folklore insisted otherwise. To the popular imagination, these were no ordinary men. They were chosen, marked, perhaps even cursed with the burden of delivering justice beyond the laws of kings. As Christianity took firmer hold and Enlightenment ideas began to spread through Europe, the Vehement Court came under increasing criticism and scrutiny. Their practices were viewed as outdated, unjust, and cruel. By the 16th century, they had largely fallen into disuse, their authority stripped by more centralized legal systems. However, their legacy did not vanish. The tales persisted in folklore and literature, serving as a symbol of arcane justice and the dangers of unchecked authority. Writers of the German Romantic movement in the 18th and 19th centuries found inspiration in the haunting aura of the Vehement courts. They used the courts as metaphors for hidden guilt, divine punishment, and the struggle between individual freedom and communal order. Some literary works portrayed the courts as a kind of moral purgatory where sinners were judged not by laws but by fate. Others used the image of the secret trials to critique the emerging modern state, warning of surveillance, tyranny, and the loss of privacy. In many ways, the Vehement courts became a prototype for secret societies in the cultural imagination. Their structure and mythos influence depictions of secret brotherhoods in literature and later conspiracy theories. Elements such as coded messages, hidden rituals, and the belief in all-seeing power echoed through stories of other shadowy organizations, including later fictional depictions of secret cabals, magical orders, and clandestine enforcers of justice. It is important to remember that the real Vehement court likely bore little resemblance to the legends. They were a pragmatic solution to legal and administration gaps in a sprawling and often chaotic empire. Their secrecy was as much about practicality as it was about mysticism. Yet the fear they inspired and the imagination they stirred became more enduring than their actual rulings. In the end, the folklore outlasted the facts, turning the historical footnotes into a cultural archetype. Throughout the early modern history of Europe, military conflict often extended far beyond the borders of a single nation. Warfare was not merely a matter of two countries clashing, but rather complex networks of alliances and enmities that enveloped entire regions, often dragging five or more states into deeply entangled struggles. Among these struggles, five in particular stand out for their far-reaching consequences and the sheer scale of their coalitions. These are the Italian Wars, the 30 Years' War, the 80 Years' War, the War of the Grand Alliance, and the War of the Spanish Succession. Each war is a testimony to how geopolitical rivalries, dynastic ambitions, religious tensions, and the shifting balance of power could set the stage for multinational confrontations. The Italian Wars, which raged intermittently from the end of the 15th century until the middle of the 16th century, represent one of the first truly pan-European series of wars. These wars began as a result of the competing claims of France and Spain over control of territories on the Italian peninsula. However, the conflict soon expanded as other European powers, including the Holy Roman Empire, England, the Papal States, and various Italian city-states, such as Venice and Milan, joined at different stages. The League of Cambrai, formed in the early 16th century, was an alliance consisting of France, the Papal States, the Holy Roman Empire, and Spain, aimed primarily at curbing the power of Venice. However, as alliances shifted, the political interest evolved. The war quickly transformed into a more generalized struggle for dominance in Europe. The result was a tangled web of treaties and betrayals, with various powers aligning and realigning themselves in pursuit of territorial or religious gains. The 30 Years' War, which erupted in the early 17th century, began as a religious conflict within the Holy Roman Empire, but soon escalated into a broader struggle involving most of the major powers of the continent. The war was characterized by a series of shifting alliances and was fought in multiple phases, each bridging new coalitions into the fray, each bringing new coalitions into the fray. On one side, the Catholic Habsburgs, ruling Austria and Spain, were supported by Bavaria and other Catholic German states. On the other, a growing coalition of Protestant states, including Sweden, Denmark, and various German principalities, fought back with increasing vigor. France, although a Catholic nation, joined the Protestant side for political reasons, seeking to check Habsburg dominance. The Dutch Republic and even England played roles at various times, supporting either side depending on the prevailing political winds. The war devastated much of Central Europe and resulted in the Peace of Westphalia, which laid the foundations for the modern state system and recognized the sovereignty of individual rulers over their territories. Closely tied to the 30 Years' War was the 80 Years' War, also known as the Dutch War of Independence. This conflict, which spanned much of the late 16th and early 17th centuries, began as a result of the Dutch provinces as began as a revolt of the Dutch provinces against Spanish rule. Initially a local insurrection, the war gradually attracted international involvement as other powers saw opportunities to weaken Spain and support the no or support the Protestant cause. England, always wary of growing Spanish influence, provided substantial support to the Dutch rebels. France, too, saw the conflict as a chance to curtail Spanish power and ordered diplomatic and later military assistance. Protestant states in Germany and Scandinavia, including Denmark and Sweden, lent their support in various forms. The war eventually concluded with the recognition of the independence of the Dutch Republic, which emerged as a significant commercial and maritime power in the aftermath. As the 17th century progressed, European powers increasingly recognized the need to maintain a balance of power to prevent any one state from achieving dominance. This principle was tested in the War of the Grand Alliance, also known as the Nine Years' War. The conflict was primarily a reaction to the expansionist policies of Louis XIV of France, who had aggressively sought to extend French territory and influence across Europe. In response, a broad coalition of powers, including England, the Dutch Republic, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and Savoy, came together to resist French aggression. This alliance, often referred to as the Grand Alliance, demonstrated the willingness of the European states to set aside their differences in pursuit of collective security. Though the war ended inconclusively with the Treaty of Ryswick, it marked a turning point in European diplomacy, reinforcing the notion that peace and stability depended on a delicate equilibrium of power. This principle was tested again in the early 18th century during the War of the Spanish Succession. The war was triggered by the death of the childless Charles II of Spain, whose will named Philip of Anjou, a grandson of Louis XIV, as his successor. This raised the alarming possibilities of a unified Bourbon monarchy controlling both France and Spain, which would drastically upset the balance of power. In response, another Grand Alliance was formed, consisting of Austria, Great Britain, the Dutch Republic, Portugal, and various German states, including Prussia and Hanover. They supported the rival claim of the Habsburg Archduke Charles. Over more than a decade of conflict, these powers engaged in battle across Europe, from the Low Countries to the Iberian Peninsula, and even as far as the Americas. The war concluded with the Treaty of Utrecht, which allowed Philip to remain on the Spanish throne, but required him to renounce any claim to the French crown, thereby preserving the balance of power. What unites these wars is not only their scale and destructiveness, but also the complex diplomatic maneuvering that preceded and accompanied them. These conflicts were not the product of simple bilateral animosities, but rather of intricate systems of alliances that reflected the broader geopolitical, religious, and dynastic tensions of the era. The Italian Wars revealed how regional struggles could quickly escalate into continental-wide conflicts. The Thirty Years' War and the 80 Years' War highlighted the interplay between religious conviction and political expediency. The War of the Grand Alliance and the War of the Spanish Succession underscored the emergence of balance of power diplomacy as a guiding principle in international relations. These alliances were often uneasy and fraught with internal tensions. States joined coalitions not out of loyalty or shared values, but because their interests happened to align at a particular moment in time. As such, the alliances could be as fragile as they were formidable. Yet they also provided a mechanism for collective action, allowing smaller states to stand up to more powerful adversaries and offering a measure of stability in an otherwise volatile political landscape. The ancient kingdom of Israel and Judah represents a crucial period in the history of the Near East, marked by political upheaval, religious transformation, and cultural shifts. Understanding the exile of these kingdoms involves examining their origins, development, interaction with neighboring empires, and ultimately their downfall and dispersal. The exile of Israel and Judah profoundly shaped the identity and history of the Jewish people, with lasting consequences that echo into modern times. The Kingdom of Israel emerged following the division of the United Monarchy, traditionally ruled by Saul, David, and Solomon, into two separate entities: the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom, often referred to simply as Israel, consisted of 10 tribes and was politically distinct from Judah, which comprised two tribes centered around Jerusalem. While both kingdoms shared religious roots and cultural practices, their political histories diverged significantly. The House of Omri played a pivotal role in the Northern Kingdom's history during the 9th century before the Common Era. Omri established Samaria as the new capital, strengthened political and economic powers through military expansion and alliances, including connections with the Phoenician city-states. His dynasty, especially under his son Ahab, is noted for political consolidation but also for religious controversy, as the worship of foreign deities became prevalent. Meanwhile, the southern kingdom of Judah maintained Jerusalem as its capital and continued to emphasize the worship of Yahweh, the God of Israel. Although the kings of Judah often faced internal challenges and external threats, the kingdom persisted longer than its northern counterpart, partly due to its geographical position and political maneuvering. The downfall of Israel came in the 8th century before the Common Era. The Assyrian Empire, expanding aggressively under kings such as Tiglath-Pileser III and Shalmaneser V and Sargon II, exerted pressure on the smaller states of the Levant, including Israel. After years of conflict and vassalage, the northern kingdom fell to the Assyrians around 728 before the Common Era. The capital city, Samaria, was besieged and captured, and much of the population was forcibly deported. Syrian policy aimed to prevent rebellion by dispersing conquered people throughout the empire. This deportation fragmented the Israelite population, which historians believe led to the disappearance of the 10 northern tribes at distinct political and cultural entities, which historians believe led to the disappearance of the 10 northern tribes as distinct political and cultural entities, a phenomenon often referred to as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Assyria then resettled the region with people from other parts of the empire, leading to a mixing of cultures and religious practices. Biblical narrative, particularly in the books of Kings and Chronicles, portrays the fall of Israel as a consequence of idolatry and unfaithfulness to Yahweh. Prophets such as Hosea and Amos, who lived during this turbulent period, warned of impending judgment, highlighting social injustices and religious corruption as factors leading to Israel's downfall. In contrast, Judah continued for over a century after Israel's destruction, but it was not immune to conquest. It was not immune to conquest. The kingdom faced a growing threat from the rising Babylonian Empire, which supplanted Assyria as the dominant power in the region. Despite efforts to maintain independence through alliances and reforms, Judah was eventually conquered by Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar II. In 686 before the Common Era, Babylonian forces laid siege on Jerusalem. After several years of blockade and hardship, the city fell in 683 before the Common Era, leading to the destruction of Solomon's temple, a central place of worship and identity for the Judean people. Many inhabitants, especially the elite and skilled artisans, were deported to Babylon in what is known as the Babylonian exile. This exile had profound religious and cultural implications. the Judean community in Babylon maintained their identity through the preservation of scriptures, the development of synagogues as places of worship, and the strengthening of communal bonds. The experience of exile had become a defining moment in Jewish history, shaping theological reflections on suffering, justice, and the covenant with God. Unlike the northern kingdom, many Judeans eventually returned to their homeland following the conquest of Babylon by the Persian king Cyrus the Great. Cyrus issued a decree allowing exiled people to return and rebuild their temples, marking the end of the Babylonian exile and the beginning of the Persian period in Judah. This return laid the groundwork for the restoration of Jerusalem and the reestablishment of Jewish religion or religious practices. The exile and subsequent return significantly influenced Jewish religious thought and practice. The experience reinforced the centrality of Scripture, the importance of communal worship, and the hope for restoration and redemption. It also set a precedent for Jewish resilience in the face of displacement and persecution. The exile of Israel and Judah was a complex process involving military conquest, population displacement, and cultural transformation. The northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrians, leading to the loss of its distinct identity and dispersal of its people. The southern kingdom of Judah survived longer, but eventually fell to Babylon, resulting in the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, followed by a significant exile that reshaped Jewish identity. All right. So I got through that. I did it a lot faster than what I thought I would be able to do it. I had my 3 stories. I'm probably going to have to do maybe 4 or 5 talking points or stories or whatever, because these are going a lot faster. It doesn't bug me to do 40-minute live streams. You know what I mean? It's just really weird. It don't feel right, especially when I get on here and I'm used to doing like 3-hour live streams. And then like yesterday I did 6 hours, and then I come in here and do this episode and then Weird Science, and they only take like 35, 40 minutes, maybe 50, maybe an hour out. And it just doesn't feel right, but I'll get over it, I guess. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I will come back again with more. It's like I told you, this is stuff that I actually had just sitting around in my notes, things that I've been researching, and I haven't had a chance to actually do a good recording of them, or maybe I did at one point and the audio was horrible. So I decided to come on to the wonderful world of weirdness and make a live stream with these as my ratings for it. So if you guys like this, I ask you to please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give some feedback, make comments down in the comment section. It doesn't have to be about the topics or the readings. It can be just to say hi, have a conversation, whatever. If you want to watch us, you can watch us on Rumble at the Wonderful World of Weirdness, and you can also see us on Rumble or YouTube, The Wonderful World of Weirdness, at The Wonderful World of Weirdness. I do have playlists on those channels. Now you can also check me out on Kick as well as Twitch. On Kick and on DLive, I am Roger_Hanson. And on Twitch, I am Infamous 1969. Or yeah, I'm Infamous 1969. You can catch me there. I usually do streams almost every day, most of the time, so it's not really hard to catch me on here. And other than that, I'm also on Teams. You can find me at Live with Roger Hanson, Roger's Real Time Talk Show event, and Roger's no Live with Roger Hanson. On Discord, you can find me at The Wonderful World of Weirdness. So if you want to get involved, make comments, maybe put something into the chat that'll eventually make it onto the stream, just join Discord or Teams with me and give me your stories, and I will make it a point to put it on a stream if you want to. Heck, if you want to come on and tell the story yourself, you can do that as well. Heck, just record it. Send me the recording if you want. Either way, it doesn't matter. You're more than welcome to be a part of the community. That's all I'm saying. So, with that being said, I am going to go ahead and leave or end the stream, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. Talk to you later.